was like heaven. She plucked the herbs stalk by stalk, holding IR carefully to avoid crushing it by accident, and then carefully placed it into the bag under her armpits. If the goblins came to help, they could probably have finished faster, but they were too busy watching their surroundings. Henry was not stupid enough to take them off their sentry duty to help her pick herbs in comparison. Nefaria's harvesting methods were like poetry in motion. He swiftly pulled them out of the ground without pause, in a way that did not damage their potency as medicine. Only a professional like himself was capable of such a feat. Henry silently watched Nefaria, who was staring at the herbs with a diligent expression on his face. The face that had become so familiar looked like someone else's before her. He's a man now. What's wrong? Nefaria suddenly looked up. He must have sensed that Henry had stopped work. Henry had done nothing wrong, but she still looked down in embarrassment. Ah, well, I just thought you were amazing, Enfi. Really? I didn't think it was that fantastic. I'm only a dabbler when it comes to herbalism. This level is about par for the course. Is that so? I guess. The conversation ended, and their bags slowly filled with herbs. After they were just over half full, the goblins suddenly hunkered down, and crouched next to the two of them, as though looking for somewhere to hide. Kaijali gestured at Henry to keep quiet. This was an emergency. Henry, who understood, pricked up her ears. From far off in the distance, she could hear the sound of plants being trampled. Something's coming. It's coming for us, or rather, it's advancing and most likely it's going to end up here, so we need to get away from here for a bit. Then, we won't need the noisemaker decoys? That's right, Anisan. It's better if we don't have to use those. It feels like things will go bad if we do. Come, let's move. The five of them began moving away from the direction of the sound, hiding in the shadow of a nearby tree. They did not go further because they did not want to risk making noise on the nearby vegetation. If the other party was just advancing forward, there was no need to risk being discovered. Since the tree was not very big, it could not hide all of them. The most they could do was crouch at its roots and hope they weren't too obvious. In this way, the five of them quieted their breathing and prayed that the source of the sound would turn in another direction. But unfortunately, this did not happen, and the figure making the noise finally came into Henry's field of view. A tiny gasp of surprise escaped from Henry's mouth. It was a ragged-looking little goblin. His body was covered in tiny wounds which bled profusely. His breathing was rapid and uneven, and the smell of his blood and sweat spread throughout the area. Even though goblins were already smaller than humans, this goblin was small even for another goblin. Henry and the goblins concurred that this goblin was a child. The goblin child looked fearfully to his rear, in the direction where he had come from. There was no need to listen up for the sound of trampling plant life that followed from behind him. From the looks of things, they were hunter and prey. He frantically moved his spasming feet, taking cover in a patch of shade different from Henry's own. That please be quiet. Goka had not even looked at Henry as he interrupted her. Those unrelenting eyes were fixed on the direction from which the kid had come. Just over 10 seconds later, the pursuer revealed itself. It was a huge magical beast that resembled a black wolf. The reason why they could instantly tell it was no ordinary wolf was because of the chain wrapped around its body. The serpentine chain did not hinder its movements at all, as though it were merely an illusion. Two horns sprang from its head. Nefaria muttered the name of the beast to himself. Barghest. Although it could not possibly have heard him, the barghest sniffed around like a dog, and then its face twisted. It was an evil grin that no mere beast could ever make. It slowly looked around its surroundings, and its eyes settled on the tree, where the goblin child had hidden. Just like the beast it resembled, the barghest had a bloodhound scenting ability. There was no way it could not sniff out the goblin child, who had bled so much on the way here. From the look of things, the reason why the goblin had managed to get here was not because he had been able to evade the barghest. Rather, it was because the barghest was a sadistic creature, or maybe it was because it was hunting for sport. Suddenly, the barghest stopped moving, surprise nodding its face, and it stared at the place where they had gathered the herbs. Henry pulled her face back. The others quickly followed suit. Behind the tree trunk, Henry opened her hands. Her skin was green and speckled with stray bits of plant matter. Beside her, Nymphyria did the same thing. The sap and juices from the herbs we picked. This was the same sort of thing that Nemu was soaked in when she ground up the herbs. Although it did not affect those with numbed noses, like themselves, the powerful stench still hung in the air. She found the sudden pounding of her heart noisy. It started moving. It's moving away? Could it be it didn't smell us? Unrai had his ear to a tree, and a question mark appeared above his head. Maybe it can't pinpoint where the scent's coming from? What do you mean, Uni-san? Don't monsters have very sensitive noses? That's the reason why, Nymphyria quietly explained. The key point was that because it had an extremely sensitive sense of smell, the stench floating in this area was particularly effective against it. The barghest had confused the scent of Henry's hands and bag with that of the already harvested areas. Even better, the smell had covered up their original scent. It was also possible that the barghest had torn up the herbs to smoke the goblin child out. Although the powerful stench was everywhere, if they fled in haste, the displaced air from where they were fleeing might catch the barghest's attention. Then, let's use the kid as a sacrifice and be done with it. We don't know how strong this barghest is, and engaging it without prior knowledge would be too risky. That cold-blooded reply made Henry look at Goku's face. However, these words were logical ones. The goblins put Henry's personal safety as their top priority. With that in mind, avoiding combat with that magical beast was only to be expected. They would even sacrifice one of their own kind for that without a second thought. He was probably correct, given the conviction with which he had spoken those words. However, Henry disliked it. Even if they were of different species, not helping someone you could help would disgrace herself as a human being. Who knew, if she had not been a silly village girl who had never known a goblin attack, and lacked a sense of danger, she might not have thought that way. Henry looked around to the others. The goblins knew Henry's wish. They simply did not want to speak it. After that, Henry looked to Nymphyria. I'll help. Who knows, that goblin child might become a valuable source of information. If we don't find out why he fled here, it might end up causing danger to the village. The goblins knitted their brows. Is there a chance you might lose? Certainly. But if that's a barghest, we're in luck. Barghest leaders are pretty strong. But from the look of that guy's chains and the size of his horns, I don't think he's of that type. If it's just a barghest, we're sure to win. Wait a minute. Ain-san's here too. We should avoid danger. Henry swallowed. She knew what she was saying was only to satisfy her ego, and her foolish words would endanger not just herself, but the others around her. But even so, Henry still opened her mouth to speak. If we abandoned someone we could have helped, it would be as bad as tormenting him ourselves. I don't want to be like those people who harm the weak. Please. Kaijali, who had been watching Henry's earnest expression, sighed in defeat. At the same time, the monster's strange bark rang out. They could clearly hear the sound of mocking laughter within it. In response came the goblin child's pitiful wail. There was no more time for confusion or debate. It can't be helped. Get him, lads. The goblins took the lead in jumping out, followed by Nymphyria. Henry felt a terrible, wrenching pain in her heart as she watched the warriors who went into battle to fulfill her wishes. All she could do was watch them from behind. Then, Henry thought, at the very least I should stay here and watch them seriously, without blinking even once. The four who had leapt out saw the barghest pressing the goblin child down beneath it. The goblin child sported new wounds, but was not dead yet, because the barghest had the bad habit of toying with its prey. The barghest's movements stopped, and it stared at the group of people who had jumped out, and then at the goblin child. Perhaps it was afraid that its prey had led it into a trap. Hey, come on boy, Unrai said, pointing to himself with his thumb. Want to play? I'll play with you. Come on. The barghest growled, full of menace. In a natural, flowing motion, Kaijali drew the machete at his waist. The other goblins followed suit. No need to think so much. I'll teach an old dog like you new tricks. How about we start with play dead? Ajia. In response to the goblin's taunts, the barghest squeezed the goblin child it was stepping on, who wailed in pain. Although it could not speak, its actions made its intentions clear. Make a move and I kill the brat. However, very good. Go ahead and kill him. The three goblins ignored the barghest's taunt and charged in with shouts of their own. This unexpected response brought confusion to the eyes of the barghest. The barghest could not have known that the goblins had not shown up with the intention of saving the goblin child. They were only here because of Henry's wish, and their attitude was, as long as we tried to save him, it's good enough. Since they had shown themselves for a confrontation, their precious Henry might get hurt if they did not bring down the barghest. As a result, they had to make sure they killed the barghest. So if the goblin child was murdered, if that wasted their opponent's first action, and let them seize the initiative, then the goblins would gladly let the kid die. Seeing itself reflected in the blades of three machetes, the barghest understood that it could not use its hostage against them and stopped moving. It was confused as to whether or not it should finish off the boy it was pinning down. Taking his life would be easy. It would be gone in one bite. However, if it did that, there was no question that it would be hacked to pieces by its enemy's weapons. The threat to its life led the barghest to its decision. Ignoring the goblin child, the barghest leapt at the goblins to meet their attack. A barghest was heavier than a goblin. The barghest was hoping to pin its foes under itself and finish them off by ripping their throats out with its fangs. However, this was a poor choice. The targeted goblin easily twisted out of the way of the attempted attack, and at the same time the other two goblins on the left and right slashed at the barghest with their machetes. One blade was deflected by the barghest's chains, but the other ripped into its body, sending blood everywhere. At the same time, a small hurled vial shattered after hitting the tip of the barghest's nose. Gaia. The vile miasma which now clogged its eyes and nose drew an agonized howl from the barghest. And at that moment, 3 more jolts of pain ran through its body. It could sense that it was in trouble from the outflow of blood alone. The barghest wept, its vision shaky and blurred, and made its move. Its target was the one who had thrown the vial, a human. However, the barghest had only taken a few steps, when its feet stuck to something below, and could not move. Looking down, it saw that the ground was covered in a strangely colored slime. The bizarre liquid was not absorbed by the earth. The glue won't be able to resist a magical beast's strength for long. Take it down in one shot. In response to the human's voice, the goblins shouted their battle cries and charged. In addition, the human cast a powerful spell at its direction. Shaya. The barghest used all its strength to wrench its feet from the ground. Although its movements were slowed, because its feet were still coated with adhesive and dirt, it was still able to fight. Watching the goblins close in for the kill again, the barghest used its superior intellect, compared to a regular beast, and acknowledged the fact that these goblins were mighty foes. It acknowledged that these were different from regular goblins in one crucial way: they were enemies who could kill it. This barghest knew 3 methods of attack. It could gore, piercing its foe with its horns. It could bite. It could knock its foe down and rake it with its claws. Unlike stronger barghests, it did not have any special abilities. But in truth, it had an ace in the hole. This tactic completely abandoned defense, and if the barghest failed, it would be doomed. But now was not the time to worry about holding back. It had to make full use of what could be the last few seconds of its life. The barghest howled wildly, checking the advance of the enveloping goblins. Reinforce armor. The spell from behind, cast by the human, made the goblin's armor glow brightly. The barghest panicked, predicting that it was some sort of enhancement spell, but the goblins in front of it simply grinned. Maybe it made them reckless, but with their armor reinforced, the goblins advanced as one. Perhaps it might be called a foolish move, but then one could also say it was a brave step forward to quickly end what could be a long battle. Indeed, it was, if the barghest had not expected them to do this. If a barghest could change its facial features as easily as a human, it would have smiled to itself. The chains on its body rattled like a snake. Then, the chains binding the barghest suddenly came to life. The thick chains began swinging with tremendous force. The special ability, Chain Cyclone, would severely wound the goblins, if not kill them outright. The barghest was giving this its all. This was a big move that could only be used once a day, and after the chains were used it would be unable to use them as armor for at least 10 seconds. The risk was high. The unexpected attack threw off the goblin's dodge by a second. This was a fatal mistake. However, get down. A thunderous order cut through the air before the chains could. The barghest that had bet everything on this attack stared at the other human, who had shouted, and its eyes widened. The goblins who should have been too late to evade it had nimbly dropped to the ground, as though the voice had injected them with a fresh dose of vitality. The barghest stared at the commander, who stood behind the magic caster. And then, the barghest's forelegs and one rear leg were severed from its body as it took machete blows. It howled in pain. It tried to recover its chains, bare its fangs, threaten them, but the goblins were having none of that. Ani-san, no need for the magic support. For safety's sake, just put up an alarm around this place. The barghest, which knew it had already lost, was desperately trying to get away. Its normally limber body was now cumbersome and slow. That was only natural considering that 3 of its 4 legs were now stumps. Even so, the barghest wanted to flee with all its might. But the goblins would not allow it. Sticky blood coated the grass all around, and the stench of iron drowned out the odor of the plants. The barghest lay dead, the viscera spilling out of its corpse still warm from its body heat. The goblins turned away from the barghest, their blood-stained machetes in hand, and turned to look at the goblin kid. The kid had been hurt badly and had lost the strength to flee, but he still forced his body upright against a tree. "Hey, who are you guys? Which tribe are you from?" The goblins looked at each other, wondering how to respond to the questions of a kid who was half frightened and half suspicious. In each other's eyes, they wordlessly discussed the strategy for what kind of attitude would yield the most benefits, and what kind of information they should reveal, but Henry felt that there were more pressing matters than that. "We need to take care of his wounds first." "What can we do, Enfi?" The kid was hurt very badly, and he had already lost a lot of blood. Left alone, he would definitely die. Although Henry had no idea how to help him, she was hoping that her childhood friend would know what to do. The most normal herbs can do is stop the bleeding, it won't help against blood loss. However, Nfiria began rummaging through his pouch. "There's the newly created healing potion. I wanted to hand it to Gaon-sama, but could you show me your wounds?" Nfiria walked forward, withdrawing the potion vial from his robe. Wait, what's this dangerous-looking liquid? Is it poison?" Hostility flashed across the kid's frightened face as he saw the purple potion. From Henry's point of view, perhaps even Nfiria's point of view, this was a natural reaction. The potion looked too much like poison for him to not be on his guard. However, the goblins were very upset by the child's words, and they immediately stalked over to him. "Oi, punk. Ain-san's the one who decided to save you, along with Ani-san. You'd better watch your words to the people who saved your life. That's for your own good too, got it?" The kid turned to look at the blades brandished before him. Although he was only a child, he still knew that the goblins before him were very angry. He shrank before their eyes. Henry felt that it would be better if they did not have to intimidate the kid, but she knew the goblins had their own rules which they followed. It would not be a good idea for her to butt in with her human sensibilities. I am very sorry." "Ah, it's all right. Don't worry." As he answered, Nfiria poured the potion on the kid's body. The wounds were visibly closing up. "Yoo-woo. What's this? The color's so gross but it's so amazing." The kid felt the stares of the surrounding goblins on him and trembled. No, thank you very much. Oh, looks like the punk has some manners after all. Very good. This way, I can tell Gaunsan that the experiment was completed without a hitch. Nymphyria looked around, seeking approval. Henry and the goblins, who got what he meant, nodded to him. The potion Nymphyria created was made from the materials provided by the great magic caster Ains Ulgaun, who was the savior of Karn village. Not only was there no need to spend money on research fees, but he had even provided all the necessary ingredients. With that in mind, the meaning and value of the potion that he had created was plainly obvious. The fact that Nymphyria had decided to use it on his own was a major problem, but perhaps he could pass it off as a practical evaluation of the potion's effects. If he explains it to Gaunsan after the fact, he'll probably allow it. Herbalists have their own rules too, I guess. You used me as a guinea pig. Unable to read between the lines, the kid gasped in shock, while Henry and Nymphyria smiled bitterly in response. A reaction like this was only natural from someone who did not know the full details of the situation. Although the two of them had at least managed to smile at the reaction, there were others present who did not possess their forbearance. The goblins were clearly furious. They clicked their tongues and someone went, "That little bastard." Henry held out her hands to try and calm them down. He did not know any better, so it was only to be expected that he would react that way. Besides, he was just a kid, so there was no need to think too much about it. Well, if you say so, Ain-san, anyway, we should get moving. Who knows what other monsters will be drawn by the scent of blood. And, although we won, Ain-san, please don't do this sort of thing again, okay? Our job is protecting you. Exactly. Still, hearing Henry shout like that really scared me. Well, it's because of that voice that we're fine, oi, brat, you'd better not run off. We have a lot of questions to ask you, and if you don't want to go home in pieces you'd better answer up truthfully. Unrai-san, Ain-san, this is for the village's sake too, get over here, kid. The kid got up, slowly and painstakingly. His wounds were healed, so they should not have hampered his mobility, but his stubborn resistance made his movements slow. Goko, whose machete was dyed red with blood, spat on the ground. Henry turned to Nymphyria for help. However, he silently shook his head. As she turned to look at the goblins, she saw that there was steel in their eyes, and with it, silent approval of their colleague's actions. Ain-san, don't worry, I won't kill him. I just want to ask him some questions about what's going on. Besides, don't you think he'll die if we left him here? It seemed as though the question was aimed more at the goblin child than Henry herself. He seemed to get it, and the resistance in his eyes faded away. I got it. I won't run off. That's good. Then the sooner we move, the better. Can you be sure that there's only one of those barghests, kid? I can't. Apart from them, there's several ogres too. I don't know if any of them chased after me. And I'm not a kid, I'm Egu, the fourth son of the chieftain of the Kigu tribe. Egukuin, HM. I think kid will do for him. We'll talk about that later. It's not like it's important enough to argue about it now. Since Egu wants us to use his name, maybe we should, in order to build trust between us? Ani-san, you're really mature. Then let's gather our things and go. In accordance with Kaijali's words, the group set off in silence while watching their surroundings warily. The heavy atmosphere that hung around them was almost visible to the naked eye. Although Henry wanted to lighten the mood with conversation, the forest was not a place for humanity. She could not act lightly here, especially considering that there might be further pursuers after them. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. They left the dark and gloomy forest, and after bathing in the sunlight, the tension which filled their bodies melted away, replaced by the flexibility and relaxation that had returned to them. In that moment, they felt like they had returned to the world of mankind once more. Nymphyria was walking beside Henry, and a loud phewa escaped him, sounding like both a sigh and a yawn. The goblin's movements had lost their tense edge, but Egu's expression still looked stiff. He seemed distressed by the sunlight and the wide spaces, and it showed on his face. That was probably because he had grown up in the shadowed forest. There, the village is there. Aga's face scrunched up as he followed Henry's finger to the distance. What? That wall? It feels kind of like that monument of destruction. Monument of destruction? That's right. It's a scary new place in the great forest. Anyone who goes near it will perish. They say there's undead there too. You say everyone who goes near it will die, but you sure know a lot about it. While the monument of destruction was still under construction, the brave ones from our tribe went there and saw monsters of bone building it. Did you know about this? No, I'm sorry, but this is new to us too, Ani-san. If we go too deep into the forest we might meet enemies even our boss can't defeat. So we try not to go too far. Hey, which tribe are you three from? You're stronger than any goblins I've ever seen before. So where Aga sneaked a peek at Henry, and then mumbled something about usually humans are, to himself. Do you serve the humans? Is that weird? Isn't it normal to work for someone who's strong? But strong people, no, I mean, I've heard that humans as a race have strong members and weak members, but you're a woman, right? And the one with his hair covering his face is a man, right? Henry's eyes went wide. If she were not a woman, then what was she? No, it was just that he could not tell if Nymphyria was male. Could it be that goblins could not tell the sex of humans? Henry, I think this boy hasn't seen humans before. At most, he knows what his fellow goblins told him. Also, is it really so hard for goblins to tell us humans apart? Well, our clothes are different. Like I said, he doesn't know things like that. Don't all goblins wear the same thing regardless of whether they're male or female? Of course, sometimes there's civilized goblins with a country of their own, but he's not one of them. I see, Henry suddenly realized, and then she realized she had not answered Aga's question yet. That's right, I'm a girl. So are you a magic caster? No, is something wrong? A profoundly disturbed expression appeared on Aga's face. I'm the magic caster. An arcane magic caster. You two are husband and wife, right? Eh? The two of them exclaimed in perfect harmony. No, I mean, for some races, the wives can use their husband's power and authority, is it not like that? No, it's not like that at all. The surrounding goblins seemed to want to say something in response to Henry's adamant refusal, but all that anyone saw them doing was sagging their shoulders in silence. Then, what's going on? How come that woman's number one? We call you a kid because you don't understand why. Ainsan's strength isn't something that can be seen with the eyes. Henry wanted to deny that, but Aga's earnest eyes looking at her exerted a pressure that left her unable to speak. While Henry was confused, Kaijali asked a question. Then, another question for you. Why were you being chased by those guys? What happened? That say, can this wait until we get back to the village? And the one who answered Henry's suggestion was that's right, Sue. It would be better that way, Sue. A woman who had not been with them until now. Everyone exclaimed in surprise, and looked to the source of the sound. What they saw was a stunning beauty. She was a woman with twin braids and brown skin. She was dressed in what she called her maid wear, and she carried a strange-looking weapon on her back. She was a suspicious-looking individual, and at the same time a familiar one. Lupusregina Beta. She was a maid serving under Ain's Olgaun, the savior of Karn village, and she had been responsible for delivering the alchemical items and apparatuses to the barriers as well as commanding the stone golems. Her cheerful and carefree attitude made her very popular with the villagers. However, she had a habit of appearing out of nowhere, just like she had sown just now. The villagers believed that it was only natural that a maid in service to a great magic caster should know magic of her own, and Henry had shared that opinion too. Even so, appearing like that all of a sudden was still frightening. Lupusan, where did you? Really now, Enchan, I've been following behind you guys from the beginning, Sue.